Hi guys, welcome back. So I'm back on slug testing again. I've got here some of the ZAN 177 10 grain slugs with a dished base. Now I've been looking forward to trying these ones out for a little while. The reason being is that these are a more affordable slug compared to the likes of the Makos and some of the other brands. They're also quite soft in terms of the lead they're made from. And looking at the shape of these, so on the left there, that's one of the ZANs, the 10 grain ones, and on the right that's one of the JSBs in 10 grain as well. They've got quite a large bearing surface, which is this flat portion on the back here, so I'm hoping that these will load quite well into the barrels. The JSBs stay fairly concentric in the barrels with this larger loading section. Now I've got a nice little picture here. I've just quickly drawn up a rough comparison of the Mako, the JSBs and the ZANs. Now all of these, the Makos are 10.5 grain, the JSBs are quoted at 10.03 grains, and the ZANs are quoted at 10 grains, so much the same weight, much the same length. Now hopefully you can see here in my sketchy picture, this little section here, the parallel section, is what essentially keeps this parallel in the barrel. It keeps it concentric in the bore. Now on the Makos, this section is much smaller, so there's a good chance that these can be loaded into the barrel at a bit of an angle. And of course, if they're loaded in at an angle, they're already going to be yawing off when they leave the barrel. Now, the JSBs and the ZANs have a much larger bearing surface here to keep them concentric in the barrel. The JSBs are a fairly hard lead alloy. You can tell by the colour of those as well, being that bit shinier. These get quite a bit of friction in the barrel, so they tend to run a little bit slower than you'd probably like, and in some cases some choked barrels won't shoot these particularly well. However, these ZANs, as you can see on the left of the two there, are a slightly softer and darker looking alloy of lead, so I'm hoping that these are going to fit nicely in the barrels. I'm hoping they're going to expand on firing quite well to seal well in that barrel, and I'm hoping that downrange these are going to perform quite well. So we're going to get some targets out, and then what we'll do is start at 25 yards. If we do get some decent performance, then we'll push them out a bit further. It's a little windy out there today as per usual, but nothing that we shouldn't be able to deal with. So here's the ZANs. These are £12.99 for 400. That's basically 3.25 a shot. That is not a lot more than a good quality domed traditional lead pellet. However, when you look at the prices of some of these Makos and the likes, now they can be up to 12p each in the 177, so there's almost 4 times the price. Now so far these Makos have been the best performing of all the slugs that I've tried for all the different barrels that I've tried. However, there was some inconsistencies in the sizing. One batch of these shot phenomenally in terrible conditions, and the next batch weren't quite as good. So it'll be interesting to see how these ZANs compare. We'll get the targets out and I'll see you at the farm. Right, we're here. So I've got 25 yards. You've seen it before. We're fairly sheltered here, although I do have a bit of a breeze coming up from behind me, so it's running right up my back at the moment. I decided to shoot off the deck today instead of the table. I'm not that used to shooting off of a table, to be honest. It feels quite alien at the moment, so back on the deck as we have been previously. I've got the Anschutz barrel fitted, so this is the factory standard Anschutz barrel fitted in it at the moment. This barrel, through all of the slug testing that I've done so far, has been one of the best and probably the least troublesome of all the barrels that I've had. It seems to take very little in the way of leading into a slug from a pellet or whatever. It's got a gentle choke to it, and it's really quite a nice, clean, decent barrel. So we'll stick with this one for the moment, as it's been doing well with all the others. Over the last few weeks now, I've probably had in the region of 7 tins, 3,500 different slugs now through the various barrels, and this one at the moment, along with another barrel which I don't actually know what it is, I've been given to test, seem to be the best two that I've found so far. And they both have different twist rates, different choke profiles, but the key thing with both of them is that they both load directly into the rifling. So I've just run 10 JSB exacts through just to establish a zero. I've got a plain card out at the end just with a couple of crosshairs on. The GoPro's down at the end. The first shot I'm just going to take to the very left of the card because I don't want it to end up going too close to that GoPro, so I just want to take a sighted shot just to the left of the card just to make sure I'm not going to shoot the goey up. So we'll do that first and then we'll get stuck in, and basically we're just going to keep running these through until we establish something of a group, if we do establish a group. Right, so that feels already quite a snug fit in the barrel, which is probably a good thing. Okay, so that's all right, we're all right. It's come in a little bit low and a little bit left of the 0 point for the JSB 8.4s. So I'm going to just bring this back now to the middle of the card and see what happens. Right, so that's dropped a little bit lower than the 8.4 would do. Probably much the same sort of drop in comparison to a JSB heavy, I think. Right, well, that's pretty promising. The two of those, there's probably a slugs gap between them first two. Given the little breeze and things we've got at the moment, I would expect, because I'm not aiming off, that we'd probably average a 10mm group with pellets outside edge to outside edge. So if we can match that or better that with the slugs, I think I'll be quite happy to then go and push them out to a longer range. I'm just going to move on to the left hand crosshair on the target now. I've got a little group in the centre of the card. Don't forget, I'm not aiming off, I'm just offering my crosshairs up to the crosshair that's drawn on the card itself. Don't forget, I'm not aiming off, I'm just offering my crosshairs up. Okay, so that's quite encouraging. The first shot was the one I took to the very left of the card just to make sure that I didn't shoot through the GoPro, which is just down here. That's the first 5, a little bit of a broad spread there with the wind. Obviously they were the first 5 through it, so of course the second lot the groups have tightened up a bit, and then these ones here was where I was making some adjustments to bring it back nearer the crosshair. So quite encouraging. I'm going to bring out some targets now just with little crosses on and take a single shot at each of the crosses, and then hopefully we should find that we start taking the middles out of these. But so far I'm quite impressed. I thought they would shoot quite nicely, and they certainly appear to be doing pretty well considering it's quite breezy out here now. So get another target out and we'll get back on it. Right, second card's out, so this has just got the little crosses on it. We're just going to be taking a single shot at each of the crosses. Now we're not perfectly zeroed, so they're likely to come in a little bit low and a little bit to the right of the cross, but once we've taken another 10 shots at each of the crosses, we should be able to see if they're all largely in the same place. So far the performance has been surprisingly good. I haven't had to mess around with these are straight out of the pack of ZANs. So at the moment they're not grouping quite as tightly as the better batch of the mako slugs that I had. However, they are significantly better than the poor batch of makos that I had. But given that these are a quarter of the price, I don't know, I'm quite happy with these so far, to be honest. Oh, that wind's really picking up a little bit today, right up my back at the moment. That wind has actually picked up quite a bit now. I can see my card blowing around down the end. They're presumably still settling into the barrel because they are definitely moving around slightly still. It was probably a bit early to be shooting little crosses, but we've got to shoot them regardless. So it's interesting to see these little groups wandering though as they are settling into the barrel. Hopefully as we get a few more through it, then these groups will tighten up significantly, but we'll see. You see, that one's bang on perfect. Well, that's interesting. Right, so that wind has definitely picked up a little bit down here now. This one, that's pretty much where I'd expect them to land. So we've got a little bit of a deviation. This one skewed off to the right a little bit, as did this one. Now that wind is swirling right around over the top of you there. But most of these, if we overlaid all of those, they're definitely going to be underneath a 5p. So acceptable. I would have liked a little bit better, to be honest. Do I need to run more through the barrel? Yeah, I think I really do. Ideally now I really want to go and take these out to 45 because we've only got 30 of them left, so I think the wise thing to do would be to run more through to see if we can tighten these groups up, but I'm quite keen to see what they'll do at 45, so we'll get out to 45 now. That's where we're shooting from. You've seen it before, target's out here at 45. It won't focus, but we need to get these shot. The wind's really picking up, there's a storm rolling over. You can see it over the back there, hopefully. That wind is now gusting probably 17 to 20 mile an hour from left to right. Now I'm in a relatively sheltered corner, as is the target, but there's 25 to 30 yards between me and the target where that wind's really pushing through, so I will wait for the gusts to die off. But I'll tell you this now, this is not ideal conditions for any meaningful testing, but it is fun and I do want to see how these perform in the winds. Definitely not the best conditions for any meaningful testing, however I'm quite enjoying it. I definitely want to get some more of these slugs though for some further testing. We're just going to literally see if we can shoot a group in the centre of this A4 card. 1.5 mil dots of drop from 25 yards. That's pretty good actually for a pellet or a slug of this weight. We've actually got a bit of a storm coming. It's rolling right over from behind you towards me, so we'll probably see it starts getting a lot darker quite quickly in a minute. What I am going to try is this little monopod thing. I need to make a foot for it, but I wonder if I can get that anywhere near the target. That's interesting. We'll try that for a little bit. Well, that adds a bit more stability. This bipod's up a little bit higher than I'd really like. There's a bit of a mound in the middle here, so I've had to raise the bipod up. It's not a particularly comfortable position, but it feels quite stable with this funny little monopod thing on. Watch that one in flight all the way through. I've just gone and drawn on another little crosshair on that card. It's quite a lot more stable using this monopod than I thought it might be. We'll see if that improves the results a little bit. Hopefully it make me a bit more stable than having this bipod up high. Oh, that wind had really picked up then. You can probably see it starting to get a lot darker. It's going to absolutely tip it down in a minute. And that wind is really gusting. Whoa, okay, so with the monopod, when that wind dies off, these are grouping really quite tight. They seem to be fairly easy to judge where these are going as well. I can tell as I feel that wind on my cheek, as that wind picks up, I can quite easily judge where they're going, so it certainly wouldn't take too long to get yourself accustomed to where these would be landing and make a suitable allowance for the wind. They seem to be fairly consistent. Whoa. When that wind dies off, these are pretty good. You can watch them in flight all the way through. They look pretty stable, unlike some of them cheapy nasty lead pellets that we've had. They would sort of, you could see them tumbling, but you can see these make quite a nice track all the way through to the target, so pretty good. Wow. Okay, so in calm conditions, these would actually be doing a sort of probably a 15 mil group, if not a bit less than that. When that wind picks up, of course, they are getting a bit of drift over to the right, but in terms of elevation change, that's pretty good considering that wind. You'd normally expect them to be sort of dropping off as the wind increases. They would sort of come down and get pushed the direction of the wind as well. That wind's really howling through the middle there. The group that I've just shot off of the little monopod at the back is surprisingly good. I'll run you down there now, but I tell you what, if you're considering trying some slugs out, I would highly recommend that you try the ZANs first over any of the others. Oh no, not again. Hopefully we got most of that. Right, well that's not too bad at all for 45 yards, and this wind is really kicking off. Them slugs have torn up the card quite badly, but the actual pellet strikes in the backboard, you've probably got 35mm maximum in wind drift. We've got under 20mm of elevation change, which is quite surprising considering how that wind's picked up. Now this was shot off the monopod. We need to be a bit careful with these to work out roughly where these actual pellet strikes are and not the tears in the card. So I'll see you at home. Right, it looks like we got back just before that wind really picked up. It's gusting like a good one out there now, and it's also started tipping it down, so I think we managed to get these done just in time. Now, these were the first ones that we shot 25 yards off the deck. Now, of course, these were the first of these ZAN slugs that I'd shot through that barrel, so generally speaking, you want to at least run 25 through to season that barrel in, to lead it in a little bit. However, I did measure these groups up in any case. So the very first 5 that I put through, we got an 18mm group, which, to be honest, for the first 5 of anything you put through there, don't read too much into that to start with. By the time the second 5 had gone through, these groups had tightened up a fair bit. Now we were down to a 10mm group, which is basically just a little clover leaf pellet hole there, which was pretty good. The ones around the top here, these were just as I was making some adjustments to bring them back up onto the crosshairs. And as I mentioned in the video, this was one I just chucked on the left-hand side of the card, so I didn't shoot my GoPro that was tucked down on the right. So the first lot, looking quite good. They felt nice and smooth to load. Because I'm loading directly into the rifling in the Anschutz and I'm thumbing them in, I can actually see that they're loading quite concentrically in the bore. There was no weird sort of movement in them. They just felt quite nice going in. And as I thought, looking at the colour of the slugs themselves, they certainly feel to be a slightly softer makeup of lead alloy than the JSBs are. Similar sort of coloration that you'd have with the mako slugs, and they feel to be, by hand, they certainly feel to be of similar makeup. So nothing scientific, but they certainly feel that little bit nicer. Right, so second up then, the second lot that I ran through, I thought, right, I'll just shoot them against some crosshairs and just see where the pellets were striking. Now, don't forget, at this stage, the barrel is still leading in. Don't read too much into this, but if you overlaid all of these, you'd end up with a group of around 14mm outside edge to outside edge. So pretty acceptable, considering I had a couple that were just a little bit more wayward. Now, that wind had really started to pick up at this point, so quite acceptable to get the odd one that just peels off a little bit in a swirly wind. So in any case, I was quite happy with that, bearing in mind that the barrel was only still at this point, only had 30 odd through it. So I thought by then it's time to run them out to 45. Again, still probably too few to get some decent results from at 45, but we did it anyway. I wanted to get out there before that weather got too bad. So this is what we got at 45 yards. Now, this was the first little group that I shot. This was me just with the glove supporting the back of the rifle. Now, you can see there's a bit of elevation change here. I can't quite explain what happened to that one there. Possibly I wobbled, I'm not entirely sure. But we got one that opened that group up a fair bit. Once I dropped that little monopod down, that made quite a difference. That made it quite a lot more stable a platform to shoot from. And strangely, it tore the card up an awful lot more. Now, I don't know whether that was just because the card was a little bit off of the backboard or not. Right, so the group we've got here is 40mm wide. Now, that was pretty good considering how hard that wind was pushing over the top of us towards the end of shooting these groups. There's 22mm of elevation change. Now, again, some of that will be the wind pushing them. The wind was coming from sort of left to right quite strong, and that tends to push them across and down a little bit. In these conditions, could I have bettered that with the JSB heavy? I don't know that I really could have done in that gusty wind. I would certainly suggest that these have matched a decent batch of JSB heavies. Now, don't forget that every barrel is different. Every rifle is different. One of my other barrels, I could have probably shot a group twice the size of this. I could have shot a group half the size of this. But I am going to say something fairly bold now. If you are considering trying slugs in your air rifle, if you are interested in trying them out, I would highly suggest that you try the ZANs before any of the others, especially in the smaller calibers. You stand a far better chance of getting these loaded into your barrel true than you will do with a lot of the other brands. So overall, I'm fairly happy. Drop wise, we got just under 1.5 mil of drop from the 25 yard zero, which is a tiny bit less than a JSB heavy would have done at the same range. But you've got to bear in mind that these were running through nearly 35 feet per second slower, so that's almost a full foot-pound lower in power than a JSB heavy would have done through the same rifle and through that same barrel. Most of that power drop that you see with these slugs is because they have that larger rear bearing surface. They generate more friction in the barrel, and subsequently you end up they running through slightly slower. If you're lucky enough to have no power limits and you can run these up in the sort of low 700s, I reckon that these groups would tighten up significantly. So we can't really do that in the UK. If you cranked these up to, say, 710, through the chrono, yeah, your rifle would still be legal, it'd still be sub 12. However, the minute you then went and put a JSB heavy through it, or something like one of them QYS Magnums, for instance, you're going to be well over. So unfortunately, we're very limited. We can't really push these up as much as we'd want to. I reckon not a bad test overall. I'm definitely going to buy some more of these, and I'm going to run them through all of my other barrels. For the price point, they're definitely worth a try. Yes, they're a little bit more expensive than a good quality traditional Diablo pellet, but not a vast amount. You may well find that your barrel loves them. Mine, not bad. Considering the conditions that we had, I'm actually quite happy with these groups that we shot. I would have liked better. I'm definitely going to get some more, and we're going to do some more thorough testing. I've got 4 barrels now for the Anschutz. I've got a chokeless one as well, so we can do some really quite detailed testing and comparison between them. But I think that'll do it for this one, guys. I've got a bit more stuff to do for the next video. We've got a load of really mad ballistic tipped pellets. We've got some penetration testing to do. We've got some NATO ballistic gel, loads of mad pellets, and we're going to see if we can go and have some fun shooting stuff. So I'll see you in the next one.